Hello, I'm Cindy Arenberg-Seltzer, President and CEO of the Children's Services Council of Broward County. Welcome to another episode of Future First, Focus on Broward's Children. Today is all about BPK. What you may have known as the Broward Children's Strategic Plan is now called Broward Partnerships for Kids, or BPK. Since 2001, this powerful collective has united more than 30 committees made up of public and private partners, government, faith-based organizations, and community residents. CSC provides the backbone support, sharing data, breaking down systemic barriers, shaping strategies, and driving action for children and families here in Broward. All of this community collaboration moves us toward 5 bold results: children living in stable, nurturing families, children who are mentally and physically healthy, children ready to succeed in school, children in safe and supportive communities, and young people who transition successfully into adulthood. This is more than planning. It's a movement, and it's happening right here in Broward County and has been for over 25 years. Now let us meet some of the leaders who are helping to make this impact a reality for Broward's children and families. Welcome to Dr. Nikki Chiwara, Director of Family Strengthening at JAFCO Children's Ability Center, Jamaro Terra-Portier, Director of Community Outreach and Anti-Human Trafficking Coordinator for the 17th Judicial Circuit, the Broward State Attorney's Office, Arlene Connolly-Drummond, CEO of the ICY Group, LLC, and Dr. Carl Dassey, Director of Community Research and Partnering at the Children's Services Council of Broward County. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank
Cindy.
you for having us, Cindy.
All of that was a lot of words. But what it really comes down to is all of us and so many more people working together to improve the lives of Broward's children and families. This has been a passion project for me since I launched it back when I got here 27 years ago now. And Carl has really picked up the mantle at CSC, driving the management of the community and the committees forward. So Carl, tell us how you live this every day and what this BPK structure is all about.
So Broward Partnership for Kids is amazing. First off, it works. It's bringing in incredible people that represent all different types of organizations, small nonprofits such as Arlene's group, also larger nonprofits where Nikki works, and also other government agencies such as where Jamaro works. And we also bring in families, we also bring in children, we also bring in youth and parents. It's about working together collaboratively in a framework that really asks a couple of key questions. What can we do as a community working together collaboratively to improve the lives of children and families and help them thrive and be successful leaders for tomorrow? And it's incredible.
Collective impact is the name of the game. And Arlene, you have been there almost since the beginning by my side, although your titles have changed over time. You have been a key member of the Children's Strategic Plan. I will get this. Broward Partnerships for Kids. And the Fatherhood Men and Boys Committee. Can you talk about that?
Sure. It is so exciting, Cindy. I get to live my passion in these committees. So since the beginning, I started with youth. I was over the Positive Youth Development Group and transitioned to the Fathers, Men, and Boys Action Committee. And what we get to do in the Fathers, Men, and Boys Action Committee is look at how do we create a healthier ecosystem that supports the development of boys into strong men, and then those men into healthy and engaged fathers. And we get to do that through this collaborative and the support of CSC, and we just love it.
I mean, one of the things that's so important, one of the drivers that took me to this was there were all these disparate groups that were working on issues in their own silos. And as I would sit in one room and then go to another, and they'd form a committee, and then they would form a committee again, and I'm like, weren't you with me yesterday when we just formed this committee? We need to create a focal point so that everyone knows what to do and where to go. And human trafficking is one of those areas that a lot of people worry about, and they want to start committees and they want to start it here. And we're like, No, let's have one. You can have some subcommittees, but you need to have a focal point. And Jamara, you've been on the forefront of that work.
For a long time.
Long time.
Yeah, fighting the good fight. Yeah, so first of all, I want to just say thank you to the Children's Services Council of Broward, because you all have, your partnership has allowed us to do a lot of work, a lot of good work in this county. So the Broward Human Trafficking Coalition, we are a nonprofit organization, but we are the largest nonprofit in Broward County fighting to eradicate human trafficking. The amazing thing about BHTC, as we're affectionately known, is that even though we're not a direct care service provider, because we have built such amazing relationships with community-based organizations throughout the county, we have become the vetting source for organizations and community-based organizations that are providing that direct care service, you know, that are providing that safe service. So people trust our judgment. They trust the work that we've been doing all of these years. And our educational and awareness events are phenomenal. They are effective. They are meaningful. We are not checking a box. And again, we are able to do this work because CSC has partnered with us and believes in the work that we're doing. And, you know, they disregard all of my yelling and screaming. And
I don't know about disregarding,
and they
we
continue,
overlook it.
and they continue to work with us because they understand, and I believe CSC understands that this work is valuable and it's needed in this community.
100%. Nikki, you're one of our newer chairs,
Yes,
but
I am.
you're actually chairing one of the first Children's Strategic Plan committees,
And
the
if I dare say
Special
so,
Needs
the most
Advisory.
important, right?
What's that?
I said, if I dare say so, the most important.
Oh, yes, of course. The Special Needs Advisory Coalition. So could you talk a little bit about what that is?
Absolutely. So this is a group of, like it says, a coalition, a group of people, very passionate people really have come together and they want to serve the most vulnerable among us. And so we're talking about people with developmental disabilities, physical disabilities from ages 0 to 22. And we're really all sorts of services, people who are providing respite services and case management, educational services. We partner with Broward County Schools, private providers, just all sorts of people who are coming together and say, how can we help people with disabilities flourish? How can we help make sure that they are ready for adulthood when adulthood comes along? How can we make sure that their families are stable? Because raising a child is challenging in itself. When you're raising a child with special needs, that's a new level of being challenging. So these are really a group of people who've come together and say, we want to support the families that are doing this and work alongside the families so that they work as almost as a bridge between what's happening in the major system, in the macro system, and what's happening in the micro system with the families themselves.
One of the things that's wonderful about Broward County, and that also pushed me towards this Children's Strategic Plan idea, is there are so many services and so many people of goodwill in this community, but we wanted to make sure that they were rowing in the same direction and that the work was measurable and accountable. Yeah. And so we introduced results-based accountability into this concept. Carl, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. But first I want to say, if you're a person out there that wants to be a change maker like these incredible people in this group over here, all you have to do is go to CSC's website, which is cscbroward.org. On the very top, you click on the little drop down that says Get Involved with an exclamation point next to it, and you can learn more about all the committees out there. You can also go to link to the Broward Partnerships for Kids.org website and actually register to be involved in these committees. So thank you, Cindy.
Good plug, Carl.
You're going to like that.
I like that.
But results-based accountability is basically a framework for working together. What ends up happening is you have people that come together at a common interest. They look at the data that's out there. They then create a plan of how to address a specific area they see in this data. They then set goals and objectives to try to achieve that data. And they create a visualization of this data called a turn the curve report, which allows them to focus their collaborative work together with the different organizations they represent to try to move an area.
And we're looking at not just how much did you do,
Well, how
but
well.
How well did you do it, and is anybody better off?
Absolutely.
better?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You know, when we introduced RBA, I remember Sue saying, Arlene, we got to go to this meeting, learn about this RBA. I was like, what is RBA? But what's been so interesting about it, Carl, is that how the simplicity of it. It allows us to be accountable, to be responsible and responsive, but not bogged down with heavy, lots of paper. It allows us to streamline it and be very targeted and allow us to be more intentional in our ability to go and serve. So we, as committee members, we appreciate RBA and what it allows us to do. And when we talk about the backbone support, having the research team who is able to connect with us and say, you're passionate about this, but let's identify what's the data. Let's identify what's the trends. Let's identify what's going on. And let's even find out what are some best practices that are out there that maybe we can then infuse it with our passion to be able to move the needle. Because that's the goal, right? We want to move the needle.
Yeah.
I think what I like most is that it's not just the data, but the best practices, which we love, but it's also the quantitative data we get from what's going on with the people who are going to be served, because Broward is going to be different from Palm Beach, which is going to be different from Illinois. So the fact that we care about what the people in Broward County are actually saying, I think that's also very important.
Yeah. And also the fact that I think that CSC understands that this is not a cookie cutter type of work that needs to be done. And you are so correct, because people don't understand that the Tri-County area, Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami, are 3 totally different beasts. And they operate so differently. I think we work very well here in Broward. As the chairman of as BHTC, I have to interact a lot with Miami-Dade and Palm Beach. And I have to tell you, there are a lot of things that we're doing here in Broward that they want to do. But I think people have to understand that collaboration is key. Understanding that egos have to be checked out at the door if you want to effectively do the work and if you want to serve honestly and genuinely. And I think that's where a lot of agencies fall short. But I think that Broward, we do a very good job of playing well together in the sandbox. I mean, do we have our moments? Yeah, we have our moments.
Yeah, sure. We're not perfect.
But at the end of the day, we are able to come together collectively as one and say, okay, how can we serve our children better in this county? And I appreciate that.
That's really where we try to keep the focus. CSC's tagline is our focus is our children. But for everything where we're bringing folks together, we try to keep them focused on the children and families. And if that's your motivation, not glorifying your organization or yourself, you will tend to make the better decisions.
Yes.
It helps us remember the why. Why did you step into this sandbox to do this work? And it helps us take that why and give that why substance and traction and a pathway to move forward. When I think about bringing the Fathers, Men, and Boys Action Committee to the forefront, I brought it because I knew that there was a lot of work happening in our community. And we were doing great work with our girls, right? And I asked the question, I said, I love it that our girls are thriving and we've created all these ecosystems and things to support our girls. But when we look at the data, our boys are falling way behind, and particularly our boys of color. And so when I looked at that and my team and we looked at it, the opportunity to bring all these other organizations and people who were also interested in what's happening with our boys, what's happening with our men, and what's happening with our fathers, we were able to come together, multiple organizations, and be able to say, what do we want to do about it? And how can we affect change? And when I think about the work Jamaro and human trafficking has done, there was a time we didn't really know what that was, right? But look how we've brought it to the forefront, and not just sporadically, but very focused and very tactical and very intentional around that. And so we get to do work, and the structure, the backbone, helps us to do it efficiently. Right?
I think also what I like is also when we remember that it's not a competition, right? The goal is to serve the children. And we all bring so many different skills. We bring so many different talents to the table. And when we put them together, we actually do better. The synergy that goes on when we're working together, rather than if we're bickering and trying to, which we really don't see a lot of that. And I like that. I mean, it makes it a pleasure to do the work.
I think the key for that, though, is understanding that you have to do service before you do business. You know, anytime you're doing service before you do business, your house is going to fall, especially if you are in the social service arena, right? You're serving first. And again, I got to go back to collaboration and understanding and having a genuine respect for what all of these different agencies are doing. I mean, with your agency, and with the Fatherhood Boys and Men, and then the special needs, understanding that, you know, with human trafficking, all of that is important because your organization, you're working with young people that have a vulnerability. You're working with young people that have a vulnerability. The common denominator for trafficking, as far as what is the lure factor, you got a vulnerability that you're unable to maintain, you're a target, right? And so that is why it's so important for us to be able to get in a room together, have conversations, honest conversations, and not be threatened.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up the connection to the other committees, because while each of you bring in non-traditional partners, and you look for also, I want to make it clear, some no-cost, low-cost solutions. Some of the solutions cost a lot. Some of them don't cost so much. It's about talking to each other. But one of the other secrets to success is the regular bringing together of the chairs of all the different committees, because they are the same children. They are all Broward's children. And so understanding the connectivity across committees is also important.
Absolutely.
Correct.
If we can when we get to the place that we can better track the connection, because there's so much input that goes into the development of a child and the protection of a child and the safety, all of that. There's so many things that go into it. So all of us play a role in it. I was saying to you earlier, right, that the village, we talk about it takes a village, right? But we are rebuilding the village. We're rebuilding the connection, that partnership that says, if we know the services, the resources, I know if there's something going on, I can reach out to Jamaro. If I know a young person is missing or, you know, something is going on. I know if I'm working on an initiative and I say, Carl, I need to get some guidance on some data, or, you know I can pick up the phone and say, Carl, here's what I'm thinking, or any one of his team members, and they would help guide me and give me some resources that my committee, my capacity may not have the ability to do that. So when I look at the work I do, you know, going off around, so in my capacity, I do my company's IC group, and so I get to work with other nonprofit organizations and see the different things they do and make the connection of the dots. And when we are able to connect those dots, like Jamaro said, and put our egos aside and remember our why, our kids get to see a different type of leadership. They get to see that we are truly creating that safe space for them to learn, grow, and thrive. We're doing that actively, intentionally, and there's an organization that helps us make that happen.
I also want to add, and I thank you, Arlene, for saying that by working together and asking that question, is anyone better off? The truth is they really are. There's some successes we can point to, and I know that Nikki will be able to explain this maybe greater than I can. But for example, in Broward County for a long time, many parents didn't realize that there was opportunities to get their children screened early and how to get them screened earlier to change the trajectory and the services that those young children who sometimes became diagnosed with special needs were able to receive. We also had an opportunity where we realized that a lot of young people in Broward County grew up in families where they were either first-generation college, they were going to be a first-generation college student, or they came from an area where the college wasn't an opportunity for them. So we created Bridge to Life, which is Broward County's college access network. And basically it's created a whole framework for people working together to connect children and young people that are about to graduate from high school to learn where they can go for resources and how to apply for college. And there's countless other examples as well. One of the things that I've always noticed, and I know Cindy knows this as well, is some of the information that we learn from the committees is actually used in the decisions of where resources are allocated for the different funders, including the CSC.
It's been one of the foundational things was taking what the committees are saying, the gaps that you're identifying, because as all of you, Nikki, I want to come back to you because you brought this up when I first asked you the question. You're working at a system level, you have a lot of subcommittees and you're looking at it from a systems, how are they working and not working, and you're also looking at it from the individual and making sure that collectively you're supporting those individual young people. So would you like to expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I'll piggyback on what Carl was just saying. So for example, we have been talking for many, many years now that early intervention is really the key when we're talking about children, especially when we're talking about special needs. And what was happening is, especially in communities of color, children were not being diagnosed with autism until they were 5 and 6 years old. When doctors now they can identify autism at as early as 18 months. And so really what we wanted to do is, okay, that gap, how do we bridge that gap to make sure that we're getting the early intervention so that by the time they start school, they've had some speech therapy, they've had some language therapy, and maybe they don't even need interventions anymore by the time they get to school. And so now we have, in SNAC, we have subcommittees that work under SNAC. And one of them is that early transitions, and that team did a lot of work to make sure that parents are identifying those. First of all, parents are able to identify when the milestones are not being met on time, and then where to go once they find that out. And so now that's that connection between the data that we have known in the community for a long time and what was actually happening on the ground, and to make sure, okay, how do we get there? So we're talking to the pediatricians. So every time anybody comes in contact with a pediatrician, they're getting a screening going on. Anytime they come in contact with, when they're going to school, there's screening going on. And so once those screenings are going on, they're getting interventions early, and we're seeing the outcomes, and we're really seeing an improvement in the way our children are getting services. And I mean, that's what we're here for. So absolutely, I call that a major success. Major success. And we do the same thing with our transitioning to adulthood. What happens to your child when they turn 22 and then they can no longer be in the school system? Well, we're working on that to make sure that there is because now do people know that if you hire somebody with special needs, they're able to do their job. All they need is a little support, and we're trying to connect the individuals with the partners in the community so that they know that they can go in there, they can get employed, and they're meaningfully employed, which is what every parent is trying to support their child to go that way, right? And so people who are raising children with special needs, they don't want any less than any other parent. This is what they're looking for. And so if we can help bridge that, and if that's not happening, then how can we as a community then now come together and say, what else do we need? So now we're making sure that people like Voc Rehab understand that this is a need, and they now come in and they support better. So now that's that macro look, that system look that we're talking about. Like, how can we make sure that people, the individuals, are in touch with the system, and the system is giving people what they need?
Thank you. Beautiful. Awesome. Jamaro, I know you have some successes to point to.
Yeah, our successes have been attributed to a lot of our prevention work. Frederick Douglass says it's easier to build stronger children than to repair broken men. Prevention is key. You don't know what you don't know, right? And so that's why, for a while, BHTC was, our focus was, human trafficking. And then, you talked about the why. And then when we started, really taking into account the opinions and hearing what survivors had to say, right, about the work that we were doing, right? Because I'm not an expert in human trafficking. I'm a learned scholar. I've never, I can't speak to that human experience. Thank God I can't, which is why it's important for the voices of those who can to be a part of the conversation and be at the table, right? And with the prevention work, we started realizing, wait a second, the trafficking component, so much has happened prior to that, right? This is an onion, and when we start peeling that thing back, there are a lot of things that we started looking at it, and healthy versus unhealthy relationships, and dating, and language, and generational trauma, these types of things. And so BHTC, we started to shift the way we were creating curriculum, prevention curriculum, right? And so we started speaking specifically to that early thing, that vulnerability, right? And started, trying to shift that mindset. Okay, yeah, this is probably your normal, right? But let's talk about how dangerous that can be, and let's start trying to teach you something different. Because children, and it is a fact, children learn what they live, and then they grow up and they live out what they've learned until you teach them something different, right? And that teaching is in that prevention. And so our outcomes and the evidence has been in our prevention work. When we have young people come back and say, hey, miss, I remember you, I went to your event, and, and I almost, and my friend, and they start to share, and the information starts to resonate, because we're not talking at them, we're talking to them.
Well, and you all are great examples of learning, of continual learning, because this is an iterative process. It is constantly learning from the data, learning from the people who are being served, talking to the systems so that we can really continue to make change and never be afraid of that. I could talk to all of you all day about this. Unfortunately, we have reached the end of our time, but I do want to make sure that everyone watching realizes that they can get involved, that they have a stake in this. If you have a child, if you are a child, if you knew a child, you can get involved, and by coming to our website, as Carl pointed out, and it's the tab that says, Get involved. And so I hope we'll see you at a future meeting, somewhere, anywhere. You can be a part of the solution to make our community a better place. For now, I'd like to thank Nikki, Jamaro, Arlene, and Carl for their leadership, and to all of you watching as we work together to build a brighter future for Broward's children and families. I've been your host, Cindy Arenberg-Seltzer. For this or any other episode of Future First, focus on Broward's children, go to our website, cscbroward.org, where you can access our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and remember to join us next time on Future First, focus on Broward's children.
Don't forget about being a kid. Don't forget about paying it forward. Don't forget about love and purpose. Service is the mission, baby. Listen with love, listen with love, listen with love. Talk to your kids, ask them what's up, and listen up with love. Listen with love, listen with love, listen with love. Kick it with your kids, remember you were one, and listen up with love.